You wanted it, you got it. The Jaxson Dart era starts off with a bang and a W 21-18 win at home at MetLife Stadium against the then undefeated Chargers. Brendan London alongside New York Giants beat writer for the Post, Jared Schwartz. Jared, I'm sweating like crazy because it was an 80 something degree game. It was a game where we walked in where the only hype and expectations was on six. Can the Giants get six? Meaning, can they score touchdowns? Ooh, sorry about that, y'all. I'm in the performance locker room here. Of course, that just went off. Hold on, Jared. Go ahead, keep talking, Jared.
The performance was so electric that that it knocked out the lights at MetLife Stadium. As I was watching that, I was thinking about one of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption, and at the end, when Andy tells Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things. That's the only thing I was thinking of, is that for the first time in maybe 2.5 years, there's some semblance of hope. Probably for the first time since that 2022 playoff run, there is some semblance of hope. And look, there's not that many. We know what this team is at this point, but we wanted Jaxson Dart to start. We wanted to see that excitement that he brings, that extra juice, and we knew when they made the quarterback change, it reset the season a little bit. We have no false beliefs about what's going to end up at the end of the year or where the record is, but you put Jaxson Dart in, and it resets the clock on the season. And like that line from Shawshank Redemption, hope is a good thing. Hope, is maybe the best of things. And for the first time in maybe 2 years, there's hope. And Brandon, I always sometimes think of you during these games, and you're the hype man at MetLife Stadium. You're the MC. You're the guy who's supposed to get the fans hype. And for so many home games the last 2 years, I always think, what is Brandon doing to get these fans hyped up? Today, it was for the first time in such a long time. I feel like Brandon finally had something to get these fans hyped up inside MetLife Stadium. And look, it's tough with the Malik Neighbors injury. That's a crusher. But
Yeah.
for the first time in a long time, there is life inside MetLife Stadium. It was almost a foreign concept when they needed that stop down the stretch. You see fans, standing up in their seats, cheering. It sounds like simple things, but it's something that was foreign to this football team and this stadium for so long.
Yeah, for those of you who join us, maybe this is your first time checking out the post-game show. As Jared just alluded to, I'm the in-game MC. I also do the post-game show for MSG as well. So I'm in the performance locker room right now. Sorry that the lights went out. It's just to go to show you guys the access that we have for you guys. I'm sitting there running around the entire stadium during the game. And then around the fourth quarter, I go down to the field and I watch from the field to get ready to shoot. So that's why I'm sweating in this suit right now. So just to give y'all some sort of context on why the lights went out, I promise you I paid my light bill. But just to kind of piggyback off of what you said, Jared, you should have heard the place when he scored on the opening drive. And you talk about what we haven't been able to see at MetLife Stadium for a long time. One, a W, preseason doesn't count. I know there was a Colts game, but that Colts game last year was just the Colts game last year. So we talk about the hype and all the pressure and that's building up to that moment. Defense gets to stop on that opening drive. Jaxson Dart comes in, hitting receiver after receiver.
As Brandon was saying, there was that hype in the background with that first Jaxson Dart touchdown. And my mind, when Jaxson Dart scored that first touchdown in the first quarter, when he ran for it up the middle, my mind immediately went to Daniel Jones's first start. It was a little different. Dart's running touchdown was his first. Daniel Jones's was to win the game against the Bucs, all those years ago. But the way he kind of kept the ball, split the tackles, ran up the middle, and scored, and then that exuberant celebration. a handshake. I think with Dart, he had a handshake with almost every single player on the roster, and it was like a 5-minute handshake. Also, it was they almost had to cut to commercial break before that handshake was over, and just just the excitement, the energy, the it's little things that have just been absent from this team for so long. You look at the sideline, you see Dayball, he looked like he wanted to kiss Jaxson Dart after the game. You just see things that have not been apparent around this team for years. There's handshakes, there's celebrations, there's fans going crazy. It's amazing what one switch at quarterback can do, and that's what they got. Look, it was deflating for a bit when Malik Neighbors, goes up, injures his knee, is down in the pain, down on the ground in a lot of pain, gets carted off.
Yeah.
It looked like, for one quarter, all that good optimism was going away. But they showed heart. They got some stops when they needed to. They showed, at least on one drive, a little bit of innovation in the red zone with the little, shovel pass to Theo Johnson. It's, Dayball looked like he had more energy. We were talking before we went live, and, Dayball, kind of had his quarter zip open, and he was flying up and down the sidelines, and he was talking, and he was, getting pumped up. There was, I think, we wrote during the week on, our post beat writer, Paul Schwartz, wrote that, he was asking a few guys earlier this week. I think it was Darius Slayton and Kayvon Thibodeau. For a team that's lost so many games, I think, 13 of their last 14 before today. Do you, go into each Sunday actually thinking you have a chance to win? What is that week like when it's like, week 4, you're 0-3? Do you actually in your mind think, okay, like we're going to win today? And, they said, yeah, every week's different. You have to, as a competitor and stuff, but we're all humans. And, with how much losing there has been, you're only human in terms of what you think you can do. A game like today with a new quarterback, it just completely changes the mood in that locker room.
Yeah, if you're a guy like Darius Slayton, Dexter Lawrence, some of the guys that have lost here for a while, even a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, who I spoke to in the locker room last year, and it's like, all right, how do you fix it? How do you change it? What's different between, at the time when I was talking to Wan'Dale, what's different between this 0-2 and years prior, that 0-2? They talked about Russell Wilson and how he's brought hope and galvanized that team. And then you go and you lose against the Chiefs the way that you did, with the offense did basically nothing. Now you go in and you're asking these guys like, all right, now you're 0-3 and you've been there before. Is there anything different? I think as a former player, had they not made that change, there would have been something there where it was like, you know what, the Chiefs defense is one of the top defenses. They got Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, those guys on the other side of the football. We may have to play a perfect game just to give ourselves a chance to win that game or even be in it. But then you make that switch, and you've seen what that rookie has done from pretty much day one. And when you talk to guys like Brian Burns in the locker room, and I talk to guys like Jermaine Illuminor in the locker room, and I'm like, what's different about this Dart kid? And they just talk about, one, his moxie, his swagger. Russ has that as well. That's Mr. Unlimited. But then they also talked about his mobility and how he can extend plays. And you hear a guy like Jermaine Illuminor talk about, all right, if I maybe miss a block or I'm not as clean, I got a quarterback that can get out of that, make me right, buy himself some time to where I can kind of circle around and pick up other leakage to help him out. So when we talk about complementary football, it's not just about offense, defense, special teams. It's also what someone's skill set can do to help other guys when they're down. And I think that's what Jaxson Dart did. And I don't want to go ahead and crown him and make him Eli right now, because he did, the passing game was good, wasn't great, wasn't what you would want. 13 for 20, $111 and a touchdown. And it's not like the touchdown was some deep 60-yarder or anything. It was a shovel pass. Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka got creative, not cute, in the tight red zone to go ahead and score there. But again, I'm talking to these guys coming off the sideline as we're getting ready to shoot the post-game show. You got to see these guys' faces. the Darius Slaytons, the Wan'Dale Robinsons, because it's like, all right, if I'm Slayton, I had what 4 for 40 for 3 for 44 today. I don't think Wan'Dale had anything special, but you understand now. You're not playing for fantasy points. You're playing for real points. You're playing to get as many dubs as you can stack together. And you've now identified a quarterback to you're like, hey, Jared, I think we got something here with this kid. We've seen it with shoulder pads on. We've seen it with just shells on and just pajamas on. We saw it in the preseason. Now he got a little bit of chance where the bullets are live and the guys are trying to take his head off. And the young boy showed some moxie. So he at least put enough on tape for these guys to feel like, all right, we got ourselves some sort of foundation to play off for the rest of this football season.
And, like you kept mentioning, the aura, the moxie, the swagger, the confidence. It's some of that off the field stuff too, that it just gets guys, excited. It just changes the energy, not that Russ doesn't have that, but we know what Russ is. He's a veteran, he's been around the block. That sort of unknown about Jaxson Dart coming into this game just provides optimism. We don't know what he is yet. We haven't seen him fail yet. He's a new hope. Like the Star Wars movie. He's a new hope. That bit of unknown around him, it just resets the clock on the season. And then you come out and you set the tone early with that early touchdown. You could just see the mood, around the team. You could see the mood with Darius Slayton, with Cam Scatterbo, with the offensive line, which I thought was pretty good today. I think a couple of the sacks that Dart took, he was holding onto the ball a little too long. I think the offensive line held its own today. You could just see it with Brian Daboll.
Say that again, because when's the last time we say that about the Giants offensive line? Go ahead and say it again, man.
Andrew Thomas played the whole game. Last week he only played 20 or so snaps. He played the whole game, and you don't even say his name. You forget he's out there because that's the perfect thing you want for the left tackle. You forget he's out there. Scatterbo ran the ball. The final numbers maybe don't really tell the whole story, but man, every time he runs the ball, you feel it like coming through the screen. I mean, his head is like the first point of contact on almost. It wears down a defense where by the second half, they're feeling it and stuff like that. Brian Burns. I mean, I don't think we talk enough about him. I mean, what a start to the season he's had. He had that critical sack late in the fourth quarter. He's a gamer. He's someone who, if you think about it, he came from the Panthers. He did a lot of losing with the Panthers. He came to the Giants in year one. He did a lot of losing, and he's someone who has never taken his foot off the gas pedal. And he brings it every single play. And he's been adamant. 0-1, 0-2, 0-3. Every week's its own week. The season's not over. Just got to come out and do it. And he was a game changer today. Abdul Carter, I thought this was his, coming out party. I think it was 5 quarterback hits today. That one that led to a intentional grounding was critical. And, we get it. He's a really high draft pick, but he is still a rookie. And think about how much they're asking him to do. They're asking him to play inside. They're asking him to play outside. They're asking him to play inside linebacker. No matter how highly he's picked, that's still really impressive that he can just move all around the field and do all of that. Dexter Lawrence, who kind of had a slow start to the year, makes just a tremendous play to bat the ball, catch it. Almost, that was like an earthquake, in slow motion when he was running. But we finally started to see some of that pass rush that we finally, we were waiting all year to see. And even Theo Johnson, 3 catches for 17 yards, but I think 2 of them were pretty critical. 2 of them were at the end when they needed first downs. Yeah, they needed, the critical first downs, and obviously the touchdown, little shovel. A lot of good today. The defense got the stops at the end that they didn't against the Cowboys. There was a lot of good, and it's 1-3. It's probably too late this year, but just winning at home in front of your fans, there's value to that. There's value to not having planes, which didn't end up flying today, but there's value to not having planes overhead and a bad mood and booing and stuff. There's value to a young team for Darts and guys like Dart and guys like Carter and some of these young guys, Tyler Nubin and all these young guys, just to see a win in front of their home fans and see what it feels like to be cheered for once.
You mentioned the unknown, and when you said that, which everything you said was unbelievably awesome, and I agree with you. But when you said the unknown, I started thinking, now is this sustainable?
Yeah.
Because with Malik Neighbors going down, this is
Yeah.
going to drastically change this offense. And it was so unfortunate that that happened at this time. You should have heard, no one was
Yeah.
talking in the stadium. It's like when I tell one of my dad jokes, no one says anything. No, it was quiet. And that is so unfortunate, man, because now you've identified, or this receiver room led by Mike Groh, who I've known as a kid. Mike Groh, receivers coach, played with my uncle at UVA, coached with my dad at UVA, known him since I was wee high. You know how he's been trying to get this receiver core ready. And you know how guys have been like, man, Daniel Jones throwing the ball into the ground, man. I can't eat. Wan'Dale Robinson averaging 7 yards a catch last year. I can't eat. Now you got the quarterback, but now our top dog, our alpha dog is out. And it's like, yeah, you got to step up. Darius Slayton has to step up. Jalen Hyatt, now
I mean, this is now a chance for Jalen Hyatt to salvage his career almost. He will have a role, and it's up to him to take it, really.
But as a player, you want your opportunity, but you never want it like that. Especially when it's a guy like Malik Neighbors. It's like, if a Brandon London goes down, it's like, all right, call up the new guy. But Malik Neighbors goes down, you're like, that's our best player on the team. This is the guy that gets announced last when we're doing player announcements. So we don't know what exactly is the official diagnosis yet. A lot of people are fearing that it is a torn ACL with the way that he went down and immediately grabbed that knee. It's unfortunate because he's making a play on the ball and a free play after they were able to get the Chargers to jump off sides. We know what this guy means to this offense. We know what this guy means to this franchise. You don't unretire someone's number for a rookie unless you think he is going to be the man. They didn't do it for Abdul Carter, and I understand it was going for Lawrence Taylor. But at the end of the day, you still unretired someone's number for a guy. So you're hoping for the best, but at the same time, you're praying for the young guy to move on. You talk about the defense, Dexter Lawrence. Remember that Cowboys game? He got his hand on the ball. He almost came
two hands
down.
on the ball, yeah.
And that's what I tell people, man. Football, Jared, as you know, it's a game of momentum. If you're, as a quarterback, if you're making a throw here, making a throw there, extending drives, being exciting, and you got the crowd involved, you got the hashtag #HimC involved, good things can happen on tip balls or fumbles. So go back to last week when it felt like the defense, they were getting their hands on footballs, but they weren't turning the ball over. I believe Paulson Adebo dropped 2 interceptions. Bobby Okereke had a chance to pick up a ball, a scoop and score.
Yep.
Mahomes got that. The Cowboys game, Dexter Lawrence, the ball comes to him. He kind of drops it. But in this game, because you score on the opening drive, there's energy there. Defense has something to play for. That ball tends to fall your way.
10 points. 10 points.
Yeah.
10 points came directly off those 2 interceptions. Dexter Lawrence put them on the 2-yard line. They had to settle for a field goal, but it was 3 points. And then Drew Phillips' interception, he brought it back to the 3-yard line. And then 2 plays later, the shovel pass to Theo Johnson. That's 10 points directly, attributed to the defense. And, Shane Bowen talked in the offseason, the turnover chess. We want to be pirates on defense. And we hadn't seen it, much, for the first 3 games. Today is finally the first example where they were, they made plays on defense. They didn't go, it didn't just drop for incomplete and get a punt. They brought the ball to the 3-yard line and set up their rookie quarterback in a great position where he can succeed and not have to drive down the whole field and just, punch it in right in front of the end zone. And for so often, those little differences, you play this game, the margins are so thin sometimes. The difference is so often so thin. For the first time, the Giants were on the right side of those margins, putting Jaxson Dart in those situations to succeed. And, those 2 turnovers and for his own part, Jaxson Dart being safe with the ball, his final stats don't jump off the page, but for a rookie being safe with the ball is always a big thing. Ball security for a rookie is often, the last thing that comes with them. Him being safe with the ball was really pivotal. And, the Giants not handing a good team like the Chargers anything makes a difference at the end.
in a beef that I had, well, not so much a beef that I had going in, a worry that I had going in that Kafka and David were going to be too conservative when it came to this kid, especially because the multiple fronts and coverages that the Chargers defense kind of throws at you. We know who the head coach is and the Jim Harbaugh. That team is built for success. That team is built to win. They beat the Chiefs on the opening in opening week. You know, they're undefeated at the time when the Giants were playing them. I understood why a Jaxson Dart was texting a Brian Dable up late, getting that "you up" text. And it ain't because it's a hotline bling or anything like that. But he's texting the receivers like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. I bet you this kid played that football game a million times in his head before he lined up and went out there. And I lost a bet to your dad because at the pregame show that we shoot on Thursdays that you guys make sure you guys check out, we were kind of going back and forth on who was going to get announced last because the offense was going this time. And your dad's like, Malik Neighbors, without a doubt, it's going to be Malik Neighbors. I'm like, heck no, it has to be Jaxson Dart. He went like second. They got him out of there early. And, you know, and he did his little dance and stuff and then ran out of there. But I say that to say this. I didn't want them to play an overly conservative game to try and put training wheels on for this kid. But I also understood why you needed to protect this kid. I think once Malik Neighbors went down with that injury, then I understand you had to kind of go overly cautious because if I'm going to have him throw a ball into a tight window, I want that thing going to one. I don't know if I can have that going to Bo Collins or Jalen Hyde until they can prove it just yet.
And one part of that helps, they were winning. You know, when you're actually winning a game, you can play cautious. You know, for so much of the season, they're not winning games. And you have to take those chances and you have to just throw the ball down the field and you can't run the ball. You know, you can't. I mean, Scatterbo had 25 carries. Jaxson Dart himself had 10. That's a lot of carries. You know, when you're losing games like they are so often and you just have to throw the ball and stuff like that, you can't be cautious. You have to just, you know, push the needle and stuff like that. They were actually winning the whole way, so they could actually afford to be cautious, and that's a big difference when you're playing from ahead. Now all of a sudden your defense gets going. You know, your defense has more pass rush opportunities because the Chargers are trailing. You know, Omarion Hampton for the Chargers, who looked really good. He looks like he's going to be a really good player, but he only had 12 carries, and we know Jim Harbaugh is a guy who loves to run the ball.
The football,
he loves to run the ball. 12 for Hampton and 1 for Herbert. So 13 total carries for the Chargers. That's very low. I mean, I'd have to look from, you know, going back to last year with Harbaugh, if that's the lowest in any game under Harbaugh's tenure so far. And, you know, when you're actually playing from the front and winning a game, that sets you up for success. That sets your defense up for success. That sets Carter and Thibodeau and Burns for pass rush opportunities. And your offense can play more cautious when you're actually winning. So that is just right there. That's what winning teams do, and that's what the Giants usually don't do, and that's what they did today. And two names I did want to actually mention.
I know one. Go ahead. I know who one is.
Well, one is Deonte Banks, actually.
Yes, sir. I was gonna throw that out there. Go ahead, man, because we've been critical on him. Go ahead.
We've been so critical of him, and today we saw his, you know, the most extensive work on defense. And well, first of all, one kick return, which was I said, whoa, Deonte Banks is back out there. Whoa. And then it was a good kick return. I think he got to like the 40-yard line. And then, you know, he was beat badly by Quentin Johnston on right before halftime on the touchdown. And, you know, for a guy who's been struggling, for a guy who hasn't been playing a lot, you could easily go in the tank. And he did and later in the fourth quarter, he got called for a holding penalty that gave the Chargers a key first down. After that, he had a key pass breakup. On a slant. I think it was to either Keenan Allen or Quentin Johnson. He had a key pass breakup. It was Quentin Johnson. He had a key pass breakup, and that was a critical play. When for so often the Giants don't get that stop when they need to. You know, the Giants didn't score that you know, they didn't have that dagger touchdown to make it a 2-possession game and put the game away. So they needed a stop, and Banks made, you know, to his credit, he made a really good play to break up that pass. And you know, if you're looking for signs of growth or optimism, that perhaps is one of them. And the other name is Drew Phillips, because he's been picked on a lot, I think, through the first 3 games. You know, he had made some really big plays like against the Cowboys, but he also made, you know, got called for a lot of penalties. And, you know, I think was targeted like the most in the league coming into today. And, you didn't hear him that much today, which is always a good thing, again, for a cornerback. And did a good job in the slot, and obviously had the interception, with a big return. And it's one thing just to come up with the interception. It's another thing to have the return and put your team in scoring opportunity. And he's a young player who they think really high of. They were really high on him, and it was a bit of a rocky start, but today was a strong step forward, I think, against a really good offense.
Yeah, on Drew Phillips, Brian Burns called him a young star. Last year, he called he and Tyler Nubin young stars. And you mentioned him getting targeted a lot and kind of getting some unfortunate DPI penalties. That could have happened on, I believe, the first or second drive of the game where they throw that box fade, slot fade to McConkey. He gets his head back. And it was an underthrown football. It gets his head back and makes a play on the ball, but not grab like he got called for in the Cowboys game. So that shows that, all right, he's taking the coaching. All right, you may get on him, you might be upset with them, but you as the player, you get upset with yourself because this is something you're thinking about is like, I know they're going to call that. I got to get my hands up off of this guy, turn around and make a play on the football. We watch these, and I'll get into these comments in a little bit, but just in case we got people at home that have little brothers or sisters and nieces and nephews that play football, we watch these rival videos of these high school kids going at it. And we're under the comments, a receiver could get strapped up, but the corner is holding and grabbing. And in the comments, you read people being like, yeah, he locked up, seatbelt. That's a flag. Why are we encouraging that? And if you encourage that, kids don't ever get better as they get on to college and then they get to the NFL. So I say that to say this, that's a great job by Drew Phillips, understanding I'm getting targeted, I'm getting DPIs, I got to do something different when that ball is in the air and not panic. Great job by him coming up with that interception. And like you said, getting some sort of yak out of that to set your offense up with a shorter field. All right, let's get to these comments now. Aiden Fink, where did Brandon go? You guys know I'm in the performance locker room. Lights go out when I'm inactive. Stuff happens. Arkham Knight, and I want you to respond to this quick with these so we'll be quick with our responses so we can get to as many as possible. Dart was mediocre. Stop. Laughing emoji. I sound like Siri reading it out. Go ahead.
I mean, he was mediocre, but today mediocre was enough to win. And first of all, mediocre meant that he didn't make any losing plays. He didn't fumble the ball. He didn't throw any interceptions. For so often we see Giants quarterback play have losing plays like that, interceptions and fumbles. So already that's a start. He had them playing from the front the whole way. It was his legs that got them a 7-0 lead, and they didn't look back. They were winning the rest of the game. I mean, if you're just box score looking, right? If you're a box score watcher, no, it doesn't jump off the page. It's 111 yards and a touchdown. 54 rushing yards and a touchdown. It's not exactly Lamar Jackson, from the ground, but
even Samuel L. Jackson, but yeah.
But just that threat of his legs, on some of those RPOs changes the way the Chargers can play defense. When the whole thing, the first 3 games, when it was Russell Wilson and, the Jaxson Dart package in the red zone, and they'd bring him in and everybody kind of knew it was going to be an RPO. But we saw even in those little package plays that it changed the way defenses kind of had to line up. They actually had to respect his ability to hold the ball and, carry it out of that RPO. No, it was not a breathtaking performance, but it's his first career start. He didn't make any backbreaking mistakes.
Yep.
The rushing touchdown was impressive. The shovel pass, that's a hard, that's not an easy play for a first time start. It's about timing. It's about putting in the right spot. You kind of have to let the defense come to you, and then you kind of go around. The one thing that stood out to me negatively was, a lot of the sacks he took, I think he was holding onto the ball a little too long. It's his first career start. Look at Cam Ward. Look at Cam Ward. He's not doing so well with Tennessee.
Yeah. I got another comment for. Go ahead, finish your thought.
I mean, was it mediocre? Sure, but he won. Russell Wilson was breathtaking week 2, and they lost.
Yeah. I got another one. I'll take this one. Jonathan Bostwick. Neighbors would have been in better shape if he had actually practiced instead of sitting out for 3 months and expecting to play. Typical prima donna wide receiver. Meanwhile, Slayton stepped and Theo. Jonathan, have you been watching the football games? We're in week 4. If the dude was out of shape, then he wouldn't have been able to run and play the full games the first 3 weeks of the season. Everybody wants to be the negative Nancy, and since you wanted the attention, you can get it. Remember, the guy was supposed to have the game winner in Dallas, which was his second touchdown of the game, and I believe his third or fourth catch over 20-plus yards that game. So was he out of shape then? And then when we talk about the 3 months that he set out, it was a load management type thing because he had the toe injury, which they didn't want for him to hurt during OTAs, re-injure, and then be set back and be out of shape for the beginning of the season. And he had the back problem that was going on throughout training camp. That's your best player on the team, let alone the offense. You don't just throw him out there in practice just so he can run around with a helmet and some pajamas on so you feel good about Malik Neighbors and where his stamina is. Anyway, we'll move on to something positive. Anyway, okay, this one isn't positive, but we're going to keep it on Jaxson Dart. Some of these are, but some of the – why is Dart getting credit for the win? That's from Ashton Hatchett. Jared, go ahead.
I mean, we don't have to credit any one player. I mean, I think we credited Dart. I think we credited Burns. I think we credited Abdul Carter. I think we credited Deonte Banks and Drew Phillips and Tyler Nubin, who had some rough moments, but he's played a lot of snaps. Like, I think he's playing 100% of snaps on defense. Yeah. We're crediting Andrew Thomas for playing a full game and not even noticing him. We're crediting the rest of the offensive line, Jermaine Illuminor, who you don't really hear his name too much. John Michael Schmitz is someone we've criticized a lot. It's not easy for him because Jaxson Dart, like 98% of his snaps come from shotgun, right? Like, that's not easy for a center to have to snap the ball out of shotgun every single play. So I think he deserves some credits that no bad snaps. I know it's a simple thing, right? Like, we're crediting a center for not messing up a snap, but you run so many snaps out of shotgun. Like, you think one snap's low, one snap's high, one snap's slow. None of that happened today. And look, Jaxson Dart's the rookie quarterback making his first start. He deserves some credit. He was responsible for 2 touchdowns. And like you said, it's some of that intangible stuff too. There was a different energy around the team because of Jaxson Dart. There was different play calling that Mike Kafka was able to deliver because of Jaxson Dart. The fans were cheering to start the game rather than booing because of Jaxson Dart. I mean, you remember last week, every Russell Wilson incompletion, there was boos. There was chants for Jaxson Dart. Immediately, Jaxson Dart comes in the game, and there's optimism. There's hope. And that wasn't – but even before the game was before he even gave any reason for it. But why aren't we crediting Jaxson Dart? I mean, he's how much more could you have asked for in his first start? Yes, the passing game wasn't the best at times, but he also lost, like you said, he lost his best receiver. How many quarterbacks in their first start could lose a talent like Malik Neighbors and almost not blink?
Yeah. Here goes our last one because I got to get up out of here. They're about to start knocking on the door. Henry Dart gets partial credit for the win because the team showed up for him. Do y'all? I mean, Henry, I'm not jumping on you or anything right here, but a lot of these comments, did y'all like? And this is not one of those Ryan Clark, Peter Schrager things, but do you guys understand that football is the ultimate team game? If you're a wide receiver, just because you had 2 or 3 catches in a game doesn't mean that you suck or you didn't have a good game. The coverage could have dictated how much you get the ball, or the offensive line could not have blocked, and the quarterback didn't have time to throw you a catchable ball. Football, you're 1 of 11. 10 other guys have to do their job in order for some people to do their job. Jaxson Dart did his job today. Accounted for 2 touchdowns, didn't turn the football over, did all the right things. It was on the defense, and I think someone wrote that in the comments, the defense stepped up and won this game. Yes, because the defense understood that this is the strength of the team. This is where all the money is poured into. Joe Shane spent $99 million to shore up the secondary with Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland. Then you go get Abdul Carter with the 3rd pick of the draft. Dexter Lawrence is making a lot of money. Brian Burns is making a lot of money. And Kayvon Thibodeau is probably going to make a lot of money pretty soon as well. So there's a lot. Bobby Okereke makes a lot of money. So you got a lot tied up into that defense. They had to step up today. They knew it was on them with a rookie quarterback for them to step up. And like Brian Burns said, don't put him in a position to where he feels like he has to play and be the savior. They did that. Complementary football. Now, I know we haven't seen a lot of that in a long time. Let's just be honest. This ain't me hating. I'm the MC. I'm like, this is just me being 100 with you all. We haven't seen complementary football and a win at the same time in a long time. But you look at this with the rookie quarterback, and I know the Neighbors thing still stings, but you look at the rookie quarterback and you're like, okay, there may be something here.
Yep.
Is the season too late to maybe make a run with the playoffs and all? You don't know. We'll check it out. It doesn't look good with Malik Neighbors. But everyone in that locker room now is not thinking about that. They're thinking about going down to New Orleans, getting some good gumbo, and getting another W to go to 2-3 before the Eagles come in on Thursday night primetime football. So we've been rocking at this for about 35 minutes now, Jared. Go ahead, close
that's
out.
what you mentioned. I think was my my closing thought. And as much as we talk about Dart and we talk about Neighbors, like you said, this whole offseason, the investment was in the defense. 10 of 11 of last year's offensive starters were returning. They made a point. This defense needs to change. And the best thing you could do for a rookie quarterback making his first start is giving a good defensive performance and allowing him to play from ahead and allowing him to play with a lead. And for the first time this year, they finally showed like they were, a dominant unit. And that's really optimistic because there's a lot of money invested. There's a lot of capital invested on that defense. They should only get better. And it finally seems like they're coming together as a cohesive unit.
All right. Carpenter AF says commenting is FKN horrible. Yeah, right. We just tore this daggone post-game show up and we got the dub. You can't hurt our feelings, Carpenter AF, but we appreciate you watching though. Jamar Wright, Henry, Aiden Fink, Omnipotent Media, all you guys, Charles, Askew, Ashton, everyone in this comment list that's writing in, whether it's good or bad, doesn't really matter. Kevin Hutchins says, Neighbors out, sign Odell. I'm with it. Sign me up for it. Why not? If you, Jared, you think we're not going to the playoffs, so you might as well sign him for a little bit more entertaining and a feel-good story. But we'll talk about that Monday, Tuesday. Right now, it's time for me to get out to the parking lot. Got a little bit more content to shoot for the New York Post. But thank you guys for watching this Blue Rush post-game show with the dub for Brendan London and Jared Schwartz.